So you know what nobody warns you about when you move abroad? Is that coming home is somehow the hard part. Because after spending time overseas, especially in places that feel slower, messier, but also somehow more alive. When I went back home for the first time a few years ago now, it started to change how I see everything. From the way people work, the way people spend money, the obsession with productivity, and the way everybody seems so stressed all the time for absolutely no reason at all. Plus the things that used to feel normal felt completely insane to me now. So in this video, I want to talk about how reverse culture shock genuinely changed my worldview. Starting with the first section. Number 1. Coming home felt stranger than leaving. Because you might think reverse culture shock means, wow, I miss home so much. But no, it's more like, why does everything suddenly feel so weird? The supermarket is too organised, people walk too fast, everybody seems permanently stressed, and somehow your own country starts feeling foreign. Then there's the small talk, and I realised I'd completely forgotten how to answer normal adult questions without sounding spiritually unemployed. Because abroad your daily goals are simple: find food, avoid heat stroke, renew your visa, and try to survive the traffic. But back home, suddenly everybody wants a 5-year career strategy presentation. Plus, even driving felt weird, and maybe that's because I spent months adapting to chaotic roads, where the traffic laws are more like inspirational suggestions. And then I came home and people were getting angry because somebody changed lanes without indicating. Meanwhile I'm sitting there thinking, wow, nobody has driven the wrong way down the street on a motorbike yet. What a great day. And that's the strange part about reverse culture shock, because I think when you've spent months or years adapting to another culture, your brain quietly changes without you noticing, and then you return expecting things to feel familiar, but instead you're feeling like a tourist in your own country. And that's not because home changed that much, it's because you did. And that's the part nobody warns you about. Number 2, I realised so many people just live on autopilot, because living abroad forces you to pay attention to everything: how people eat, how they speak, how they spend their money, and most importantly, what actually makes them happy. Because you can't operate on autopilot when your daily life includes things like crossing roads that feel legally unregulated, guessing if street food will change your life or end it, and trying to renew visas with documents nobody warned you about. Then you come home and suddenly notice how automatic everything feels. Wake up, commute to work, work itself, scroll your phone, watch Netflix while pretending to choose something for the next 45 minutes, and then sleep. And repeat forever until death, or maybe a weekend brunch reservation, if you fancy. And the weird part is, people don't even question it. Everyone's exhausted all the time, but are somehow proud of it. Back home, people say things like, I've only had 4 hours of sleep, like it's an Olympic achievement. Meanwhile abroad, you meet a guy running a beach cafe who closes at 2 PM just because the vibes felt complete for today. And it hit me. Reverse culture shock made me realise a lot of what we call normal life is just inherited habits nobody stopped to examine. I mean, people buy things they don't need to impress people they don't even like, while drinking coffee strong enough to restart a tractor. And travelling didn't magically make me any smarter. It just forced me to notice that there are more than one way to live your life. And most people are sprinting through life without ever asking where they're actually going. And once you see that, you can't really unsee it. Now on to number 3. My definition of success completely changed. Because before travelling, I had a very standard definition of success. But after living abroad for a while, especially in places where people earn less, but somehow seem way happier, my brain started short-circuiting. I met people with almost no possessions who genuinely enjoyed their lives. Meanwhile back home, people have air fryers, standing desks, smartwatches, noise-cancelling headphones, and 3 productivity apps. Yet they still look emotionally defeated by Tuesday morning. Reverse culture shock made me realise modern success is often just socially acceptable burnout, with nicer furniture. And once you see that, you start questioning everything, and saying things like, do I actually want this lifestyle? Or was I just trained to want it because everybody else does? Because a lot of people are chasing promotions they secretly hate, just to afford apartments they barely spend time in. And honestly, after living abroad, I started valuing things completely different. Free time became a luxury, peace became success, and finding a cafe with good Wi-Fi and a $1 coffee somehow felt richer than half the stuff I ever cared about back home. Also, I stopped being impressed by people saying things like, I work 80 hours a week, because that's not a flex anymore. That's more of a hostage situation, really. On to number 4. Because I've definitely become more patient when it comes to chaos. I mean, you have to when you live out in Southeast Asia, because before I'd get annoyed by any small inconvenience. But now, after living abroad for a while, especially in countries where the chaos itself is basically part of the national personality, your overall tolerance levels will change dramatically. and you adapt. At first, things feel stressful, with power cuts, random delays, tuk-tuk drivers taking creative routes, and simple tasks somehow requiring 3 separate photocopies and a passport photo from 2017. But eventually, your brain just accepts it. You stop fighting reality and start developing survival phrases like, it is what it is. And that mindset weirdly improved my life, because once you've survived crossing roads where the traffic laws are treated more like motivational suggestions, it becomes very hard to get angry about tiny inconveniences back home. I came home and watched somebody lose their mind, all because their food delivery was 12 minutes late. 12 minutes. Meanwhile, I've sat in rural bus stations for hours with absolutely no information, except one guy casually saying, "Bus will come later." No time, no details, just pure spiritual uncertainty. And weirdly, you learn what true patience is. And that's a skill in itself. You also realise most problems are temporary, and you stop expecting life to function like a perfectly optimised machine. Also, travelling teaches you that humans can adapt to almost anything. No hot water? Fine. No Wi-Fi? Yes, painful, but survivable. A chicken walking through the restaurant randomly? Honestly, not even a top 10 weirdest things that have happened this week. Reverse culture shock made me notice how intensely people back home react to the minor inconveniences. I mean, someone's coffee order gets messed up, and suddenly then they're given a TED talk to customer service. Meanwhile, after enough time abroad, your standards turn into, did I receive food? Yes? Perfect. 5 stars. Number 5. I started valuing freedom over stability. I mean, I used to think stability was the ultimate goal. And don't get me wrong, stability is important, but living abroad changed the way I think about freedom. Because once you've experienced waking up on a random Tuesday with nowhere specific to be, your brain starts questioning everything. I used to think freedom meant vacations. Now I think freedom means control over your own time, choosing where you live, choosing how you spend your mornings, and being able to take a walk at 2 p.m. without feeling like you're committing a crime against capitalism. And once you experience that lifestyle, it becomes incredibly hard to go back. And travelling also made me realise how much of modern life is built around postponing happiness. I mean, people constantly say things like, once I get promoted, once I buy a house, or once I retire. Meanwhile abroad, I met people enjoying their life immediately, and not just waiting for the next thing. And they might not be living perfectly or luxuriously, but they are still just actually living. So reverse culture shock made me realise I'd rather have a simpler life with more freedom than a successful life where I'm permanently stressed. Because at some point I noticed, a lot of stable lives back home are just expensive routines. People are too scared to leave. And finally, number 6, home became a feeling and not a place. And this was probably the biggest mindset shift of all, because I definitely used to think home was just a country. Now I think home is a routine, a favourite cafe, the gym staff nodding at you like you're part of a secret society, and the fruit smoothie guy already knowing your order before you speak. Because that's when I realised, home is less about geography and more about what feels familiar to you. Because after travelling enough, your brain gets completely confused. At one point I had moments where my home country felt foreign, a random street overseas felt comforting, and airports somehow started feeling emotionally neutral, which is probably not healthy, but you also start romanticising countries as perfect places. Because let's be honest, everywhere has problems. I mean, some countries have amazing healthcare, but everybody's stressed. Some places are chaotic, but people seem happy. Some cities are efficient, but feel emotionally cold. And some places have terrible sidewalks, but incredible street food. So travelling kind of destroys the fantasy that there's one perfect place to live. So instead, you start searching for places that just match your personality. And reverse culture shock makes you realise something strange. You can deeply miss places that were never technically home. Not because they were perfect, but because how life felt there. The routines, the freedom, the memories, and the random little moments that somehow became a part of you. That's why coming back can feel so emotionally weird. Because you're not just returning home, you're comparing versions of yourself. The person before travel, and the person after it. And honestly, once travel changes your worldview enough, part of you stays a little mentally abroad forever. So yeah, reverse culture shock completely changed my worldview, but not in a deep, inspirational, movie type of way where I come home enlightened and start meditating on top of mountains. Mostly, I just came back confused. Confused why everybody's in such a hurry, confused why the coffee costs the same as a small motorbike does in Southeast Asia, and confused why people schedule social events 3 weeks in advance, like they're filing tax paperwork. But travelling and living abroad really did change the way I see life. It made me realise there's no single correct way to live. Some people want stability, some people want adventure, some people want a corporate career, some people want a beach cafe and a hammock with suspicious structural integrity. And honestly, none of them are automatically wrong. I think the biggest thing reverse culture shock taught me is that most of us grow up assuming our version of life is normal. Then you travel and suddenly realise whatever normal is completely made up. What feels essential in one country feels ridiculous somewhere else. In one place, people stress over productivity apps. In another place, business closes for 2 hours because everybody's taking a nap. And somehow both societies continue functioning. Barely, but still. And I don't think reverse culture shock ever fully goes away either. Because once your worldview expands enough, you can't really shrink it back down. Plus, you stop seeing countries as better or worse. You just see different trade-offs. Different lifestyles, different priorities, and different forms of chaos. And that perspective alone probably changed me a lot more than the travel itself. Also now I judge countries entirely based on street food quality and walkability, which feels like personal growth. But that's it for today's video. If I made you think, or even if I barely managed to entertain you, make sure to leave a like. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.